Pushed to desperation with nothing left to lose. Bloody massacres and random revenge attacks. Sweep across China. All of society is like a powder keg ready to explode. Beijing is under strict lockdown as if preparing for the end of the world. Even empty lunchboxes, plastic bags, and keys must now be scanned. Yiwu, the world's supermarket, faces collapse. Amid tariffs, exports plummet 70%, 15,000 logistics firms at risk of being wiped out. No way out. With origin laundering blocked, China can no longer evade tariffs, leaving businesses in a dilemma. Putin-Xi meeting. A test of each other's cards. Who will master the US-China-Russia geopolitical chessboard? Welcome back to New Century, where truth is honored, integrity guides our reporting, and every story is told with purpose. Pushed to desperation with nothing left to lose. Bloody massacres and random revenge attacks sweep across China. All of society is like a powder keg ready to explode. In recent years, China has faced high youth unemployment, massive debt, and a stagnant real estate market, draining the life savings of many families and leaving some with nothing. The escalating US-China trade war, with the US imposing 145% tariffs, has triggered a wave of bankruptcies and layoffs across China, pushing many to the brink of despair. A terrifying phenomenon has emerged: random killings to express dissatisfaction with society. In early May alone, multiple indiscriminate attacks and acts of societal revenge occurred, sparking widespread public panic. To address this crisis, many areas in Beijing are tightening security. On May 8th, numerous posts on mainland Chinese social media platforms reported that Beijing's subway system suddenly intensified security checks. Even empty lunchboxes, plastic bags, and keys must now be scanned. Some Beijing netizens noted that these stricter measures began only in the past 2 days, with one blogger bluntly stating, "Beijing's subway feels like it's preparing for the end of the world." Below are several incidents suspected to be acts of societal revenge, documented by citizens. On May 4th, in Tengzhou City, Shandong Province, a speeding car suddenly swerved, crashing into a crowd at a bus stop and knocking down a lamppost before stopping. Waiting passengers were struck, some lying motionless, others writhing in pain. On May 3rd, in Chongqing, a 54-year-old man set his motorcycle on fire on the street before stabbing passers-by. Police reported 2 bystanders were injured during the incident, and the killer committed suicide on the spot. On May 2nd, in Fuzhou, Fujian Province, a car ran a red light at an intersection, speeding into other vehicles and pedestrians, leaving multiple people on the ground. Online reports claimed police sealed off the scene and demanded bystanders delete videos. Many netizens suspected the driver acted out of deliberate vengeance. On April 26th, Liberty Times reported that on April 22nd, a vehicle crashed into a crowd outside Sumeng Elementary School in Jinhua City, Zhejiang Province. During afternoon dismissal, multiple parents and students were struck. Sources claimed 14 people died, but Chinese authorities heavily censored the incident on Weibo, Douyin, and other media, with posts quickly deleted. Local residents used VPNs to post on X, alleging the driver was a parent retaliating after their child died at the school. On April 25th, a random stabbing incident occurred at Xiangyang Spicy Beef Noodle Restaurant in Wuhan, Hubei. Footage showed panicked customers fleeing the restaurant, with several people injured and bleeding heavily from knife wounds. On April 4th, the X account Luoxiang posted that, on April 3rd, an explosion occurred at the Sky Garden in Shijiazhuang, Hebei. The cause was allegedly a property owner, mistreated by the property management, who filled an entire car with explosives and blew up the property management company. Notably, on March 18th, a severe car ramming incident took place in Yangtown, Shunyi District, Beijing, where a man drove into a crowd at a vegetable market, causing at least 4 deaths and 8 injuries. According to sources, the suspect was a man in his 50s, a holdout whose home was forcibly demolished after he refused to relocate due to insufficient compensation from the authorities. Enraged, he decided to take revenge on society. This is only the tip of the iceberg in the wave of violent revenge sweeping across China. Due to the Chinese Communist Party's stringent censorship, many incidents are hidden and information struggles to pass through the firewall. But even just a few recent examples are enough to expose the chaotic state of Chinese society today. Between 2019 and 2023, Chinese police recorded 3 to 5 cases each year of perpetrators attacking pedestrians or strangers. In 2024, that number surged to 19. In 2019, revenge attacks resulted in 3 deaths and 28 injuries. By 2023, the toll rose to 16 deaths and 40 injuries. In 2024, there were 63 deaths and 166 injuries, with the revenge attacks in November being particularly bloody. On November 11th in Zhuhai, a 62-year-old man drove a car into people exercising outside a stadium, killing at least 35. He has since been sentenced to death. Days later in Chengde, a man drove into a group of children and parents outside an elementary school, injuring 30. Chengde authorities stated the man was furious over financial losses and family issues. That same week in Wuxi, a 21-year-old student, unable to graduate due to failing exams, went on a stabbing spree on campus, killing 8 and injuring 17. In June, 4 American instructors were attacked with a knife by a 55-year-old man in a park. Additionally, 2 attacks targeted Japanese nationals, one of which resulted in a 10-year-old Japanese boy being stabbed to death outside his school. The question arises, what drives these individuals to murder strangers as a form of revenge against society? According to Radio Free Asia, Mr. Bao, who has a background in social work, analyzed, the individuals in China recently resorting to extreme violence to retaliate against society are often those facing various hardships and setbacks, living under intense pressure with no outlet to relieve their stress. Some seek justice but find no recourse, yet they lack the ability to confront the sources of their pressure. As a result, they feel that society as a whole has wronged them or become jealous of others who seem to live better lives. This reflects a form of psychological distortion. George Magnus, a research associate at the University of Oxford's China Center, said, "Optimism does seem to have faded. Let's use the word malaise for now. I think China has entered a depressive, vicious cycle. On one hand, immense social and economic pressure. On the other, a faltering economic development model. Pessimism about personal prospects has noticeably increased among Chinese people. While social inequality in China was once attributed to a lack of effort or ability, a recent social survey found that Chinese people now blame an unfair economic system." Magnus added, "The question is, who do people really blame? The next step is, this system is unfair to me, I can't break through, I can't change my situation." In a typical country, if people were unfairly fired or had their homes demolished by corrupt developers backed by local officials, they might turn to journalists to make their stories heard. But in China, this is virtually impossible, as the media is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party and unlikely to report stories that negatively impact any level of government. Courts, also controlled by and serving the CCP, are slow and inefficient. Moreover, other outlets for venting frustration in China have diminished or been entirely shut down. Lynette Ong, a political science professor at the University of Toronto, noted that Chinese people often express discontent online. They'll curse the government online just to vent their anger. Or they might organize a small protest. If it's small scale, police usually allow it. But even this dissent, this tiny dissent, has been blocked in recent years. Examples abound. Intensified internet censorship blocks words or expressions deemed controversial or critical. Crackdowns target audacious Halloween costumes mocking officialdom. Protesters in Henan had their bank accounts frozen, and plainclothes men, seemingly mobilized by local officials, beat demonstrators outside banks. China's capacity to address the psychological and emotional pressures of its people is also severely lacking. Mental health services in China are grossly inadequate, leaving those feeling isolated, lonely, or depressed in modern Chinese society with no way out. Professor Sylvia Kwok of City University of Hong Kong said, "Counseling can help build emotional resilience. China needs to strengthen mental health services, especially for high-risk groups who have experienced trauma or suffer from mental illness. Kwok added, "People need to find different strategies or constructive ways to manage their emotions, making them less likely to react violently in moments of intense emotional stress." Currently, the CCP's greatest concern is public comments blaming those in power. Remarks such as, "If the government truly ensured fairness and justice, Chinese society wouldn't be so full of anger and grievances." The government's efforts focus mainly on creating a superficial sense of harmony. While they appear to care about the vulnerable, their actions cause the greatest injustices. Reflect this sentiment. Lynette Ong noted that while violent attacks are rising globally, China stands out because Beijing officials have little experience handling such incidents. "I think the authorities are very shocked because they haven't seen this before. Their instinct is to crack down hard. However, so far, all lessons seem to have prompted Beijing to accelerate response times through increased surveillance rather than consider changes to how the country operates." Ong concluded, "China is entering a new phase, one we haven't seen since the late 1970s, referring to the period when China began opening up to the world, bringing massive change. We need to prepare for unexpected events, mass random attacks, small-scale protests, and emerging social instability. The CCP's high-pressure stability maintenance tactics can no longer suppress the people. Citizens are awakening and resisting tyranny in various ways. The collapse of this authoritarian regime is not far off." Yiwu, the world's supermarket, faces collapse. Amid tariffs, exports plummet 70%, 15,000 logistics firms at risk of being wiped out. Yiwu International Trade City, spanning over 6.4 million square meters and hosting 70,000 businesses, including more than 3,000 that trade with the U.S., is reeling from the U.S.-China trade war. A wave of business failures is sweeping through, leaving enterprises struggling to survive. A blogger explained the impact with an example from the jewelry industry. U.S. tariffs on certain goods range from 153% to 164%. For instance, a recent shipment valued at $1,000 incurred taxes exceeding $1,500, surpassing the value of the goods themselves. A Yiwu vlogger posted a video highlighting the stark decline in customers, noting that many no longer visit China. This is partly because Chinese factories are relocating overseas and other countries are developing their own manufacturing industries, eroding China's market share. Yiwu's once bustling market is now described as eerily empty. Cheng Xiaoyan, an exporter of creative ashtrays, fears that other countries may follow the U.S.'s lead, exacerbating the crisis. Mr. Hu, who operates both online and physical stores, reported a sales drop of over 60% compared to the previous 2 years, citing rising labor costs and dwindling orders. Another vlogger described Yiwu's dire situation, noting that businesses across sectors, clothing, vegetables, fruit, milk tea, restaurants, travel, beauty, real estate, construction, and delivery services, are struggling. Some companies cannot pay salaries while others abruptly shut down without notice. One client described a company that avoids formal layoffs by assigning increasingly demanding tasks, forcing employees to resign voluntarily. While some conscientious owners take loans to cover salaries, others show little regard for their workers' well-being. These widespread struggles underscore the profound impact of the trade war and tariffs on Yiwu, once a thriving trade hub. Mr. Lin, a Yiwu business owner, shared that domestic e-commerce in China has become unprofitable, prompting him to enter cross-border e-commerce a few years ago to sell products overseas. Merchants can supply goods directly to e-commerce platforms or join platforms like Temu to reach international markets quickly. However, with razor-thin profit margins, merchants must ship large volumes to turn a profit, and stocking up does not guarantee sales. Strict platform rules often force merchants to lower prices or face penalties. Mr. Lin noted that the U.S.'s removal of the small parcel tariff exemption, which now taxes packages under $800, has dealt a severe blow to Yiwu. As a result, many export factories in Wenzhou, Yiwu, Foshan, and Fujian are on extended holidays, cutting salaries or laying off workers. His sales have dropped by 50% to 60%, and without sufficient volume, profitability is unattainable. He warned that cross-border e-commerce has a 99% failure rate, with only 1% of merchants succeeding while the rest become cannon fodder. The trade war's ripple effects have also devastated Yiwu's logistics sector, which once supported over 20,000 freight forwarding companies due to the city's massive export volume. Mr. Wang, owner of Yiwu International Logistics, reported that since the trade war began, half of these companies have ceased operations, and shipping volumes have plummeted by at least 70%. He noted that many small businesses they served have shut down. To mitigate risks from potential tariff increases during transit, small freight forwarding companies now demand upfront cash payments or real-time additional tax payments from clients. Mr. Wang explained that some companies use strategies like Amazon's Fulfillment by Amazon (FBA) model, where sellers store products in Amazon's warehouses and Amazon handles storage, picking, packaging, and shipping. However, this model is costly for small sellers, especially those hit by high tariffs. Buyers are highly price sensitive, and even a $1 price increase can significantly reduce sales. Another strategy to avoid high tariffs is cargo consolidation. For example, with clothing tariffs around 145%, filling a container solely with clothes is prohibitively expensive. Logistics companies load only a small amount of clothing, about 16 cubic meters, and mix it with low or no tariff goods to lower the average tariff rate and total duty. However, Mr. Wang cautioned that this method is risky, as inaccurate declarations can lead to fines exceeding $100,000 per container. He predicted that if the trade war persists, only about 5,000 of Yiwu's 20,000 logistics companies will survive in 3 months, meaning over 3/4 will collapse. This grim reality underscores Yiwu's transformation from a bustling trade hub to a city trapped in crisis, with its people watching helplessly as businesses fail. No way out. With origin laundering blocked, China can no longer evade tariffs, leaving businesses in a dilemma. Since the U.S. imposed 145% tariffs on Chinese goods, Chinese social media platforms like Xiaohongshu and Douyin have seen a surge in origin laundering advertisements. These ads promote transshipment rules through third countries in Southeast Asia and offer strategies for freight forwarding to bypass U.S. tariffs. However, as countries like Vietnam and Malaysia tighten regulations, the path of origin laundering is being blocked, leaving Chinese businesses in a difficult position. An anonymous Taiwanese businessman in Southeast Asia told Radio Free Asia on May 6th that, due to high tariffs, many Chinese goods are transshipped through third countries to facilitate dumping. For countries sharing land borders with China, such as Vietnam and Laos, most goods are smuggled in. They are then processed in Vietnam, where businesses collude with customs to issue certificates of origin. Typically, goods are labeled in China, for example, marked Made in Vietnam, or Made in Laos, and issued local certificates of origin to qualify for a reduced 10% tariff. Many Malaysian importers also bring goods from mainland China through semi-smuggling or black pool containers. Additionally, according to the Wall Street Journal, Robin Brooks from the Brookings Institution noted on May 5th that Chinese customs data shows a 50% plus increase in imports from China to Vietnam and Thailand since early this year. Most analysts believe these exports are ultimately destined for the U.S. via transshipment. However, Vietnam and Malaysia have recently strengthened regulations to prevent Chinese goods from being origin laundered for export to the U.S. Chinese blogger Shanrong Naxi Shi posted a video on May 3rd stating that Vietnam implemented new origin rules on April 7th, introducing penetrating tracking and monitoring. In simple terms, a screw exported from China to Vietnam and assembled into a phone for export to the U.S. would have its entire supply chain automatically flagged, with the data synced to U.S. customs systems. The blogger noted that after these rules took effect, the model of shipping parts to Vietnam for final assembly and export to the U.S. became unfeasible. Vietnam has also partnered with U.S. Customs to focus on inspecting 15 high-risk product categories, including solar panels, lithium batteries, and furniture. If origin fraud is detected, penalties can exceed 50% of the goods' value, or the goods may be confiscated. Following Vietnam's lead, Malaysia's Ministry of Trade and Industry announced on May 5th that, starting May 6th, it would be the sole issuer of non-preferential certificates of origin, NPCO, for exports to the U.S., ending authorization for local chambers of commerce, associations, or other MITI-appointed bodies to issue such certificates. Chinese blogger freight forwarder Lao Wang posted a video on May 7th stating, "After Malaysia tightened oversight on certificates of origin, a butterfly effect has emerged in the market. Many goods transshipped through Malaysia can no longer be moved. Today, a friend complained that goods had already arrived at Port Klang for transshipment, but due to certificate of origin issues, the freight forwarder abandoned the order, leaving the shipper in a bind." Since the U.S.-China trade war began in 2018, global manufacturing supply chains have undergone dramatic shifts. Southeast Asia has absorbed significant manufacturing transfers from China while becoming a hotbed for origin laundering. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP statistics, origin laundering has surged since 2022, with over 70% of cases linked to China, particularly in Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, and Cambodia. Under World Trade Organization, WTO rules of origin, a product qualifies for a country's origin certification if over 40% of its added value is completed in that country. Otherwise, it likely violates regulations. To survive the tariff war, many Chinese companies are considering relocating their supply chains overseas. The owner of a Chinese ski product company, Dinghong Ice and Snow Sports Cow, posted a video on social media in late April stating that U.S. clients requested he move his factory overseas. He has begun preparations in Vietnam, as Vietnam is negotiating with the U.S. for zero tariffs. He hopes the Chinese government does not retaliate against the U.S., as China's export economy remains a significant driver. He candidly admitted that his 4 or 5 factories survive on foreign trade orders, while domestic orders result in losses. Putin-Xi meeting, a test of each other's cards. Who will master the U.S.-China-Russia geopolitical chessboard? As the Russia-Ukraine war remains deadlocked, Chinese Communist Party official media reported that, at the invitation of Russian President Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping conducted a state visit to Russia from May 7th to 10th to attend the 80th anniversary celebration of the Soviet Union's victory in the Great Patriotic War in Moscow. On May 9th, Xi and Putin stood together at the main viewing platform during the Red Square military parade, with the Chinese Military Ceremonial Guard also participating. This event sparked heated online discussions. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, the war has continued unabated. Previously, Putin announced a 3-day ceasefire for Victory Day, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated he could not guarantee the safety of foreign leaders attending. He also expressed skepticism about Putin's claimed ceasefire plan. Intriguingly, while the CCP loudly proclaimed Xi's attendance at the Russian celebration, other world leaders made contrasting decisions. According to South Korean intelligence, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un did not travel to Moscow. Germany and Hungary stated they would not send representatives, while Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico canceled their visits to Russia. As a result, Xi's trip to Russia is widely viewed as risky. Despite the CCP's strict control over online discussions about Xi's visit and swift deletion of comments, some mainland Chinese netizens boldly posted remarks such as, "Come on, Zelensky, come on, Taurus," "targeted elimination," and "a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, go for it." Xi's visit to Russia caused an uproar among netizens on the X platform. One netizen commented, "Other leaders were wise, taking sick leave or making excuses to avoid going." Xi is determined to board Russia's sinking ship. Xi's attendance at a celebration of a state promoting national terrorism and war crimes is a blatant insult to the Chinese people. X user Xiao Y posted that the Moscow Red Square military parade, a significant political symbol for Russia, saw Xi's personal attendance as a powerful show of support for Putin. This not only bolsters Putin's efforts to break international isolation, but also signals to the world that China and Russia are joining forces to counter the West. US-based commentator Tang Jingyuan said Xi's agenda extends beyond the anniversary celebrations. Russian statements indicate Xi engaged in bilateral talks with Putin on deepening their comprehensive partnership and strategic cooperation, addressing pressing international and regional issues. The two leaders were expected to sign multiple agreements, including government and ministerial documents, signaling expanded collaboration. Tang suggested these talks likely covered China-Russia ties, U.S.-Russia relations, China-Europe dynamics, and even the delicate prospect of a Russia-Ukraine ceasefire. He stated, China is poised to offer Russia substantial support. Tang framed Xi's visit as a move in the intricate U.S.-China-Russia triangle, where each power is assessing its leverage. The U.S. holds the upper hand. U.S.-Russia relations are cooling, but President Trump is bolstering ties with Ukraine through mineral deals and military aid, including a refurbished Patriot missile system redirected from Israel to Kyiv, according to U.S. media. This increases pressure on Putin. In U.S.-China relations, Beijing is softening on trade, with Public Security Minister Wang Xiaohong dispatched to negotiate with Washington. Tang said Trump is driving the agenda, waiting to see how China and Russia respond. Putin faces two dilemmas. First, he seeks to preserve a chance at normalizing U.S.-Russia relations without alienating Trump, while maximizing gains in Ukraine. Second, Trump has demanded that Putin distance himself from Xi to rejoin the Western fold, a condition that forces Putin to weigh betraying his Chinese ally as a bargaining chip. Tang noted that Putin's struggle to balance these priorities has strained his standing with Trump. Xi's challenges mirror Putin's. Facing a trade war, Xi is negotiating with the U.S., but lacks strong leverage, resorting to tactics like the fentanyl crisis. If Trump brokers a Russia-Ukraine ceasefire improving U.S.-Russia ties, Xi's strategy of using Russia to counter the U.S. would collapse. Xi must decide whether to preemptively distance himself from Putin, offering to halt support for Russia in exchange for U.S. trade concessions. Tang suggested, if Xi tells Trump, I'll help you end the war if you ease tariffs, Trump might bite. It would let the U.S. off the hook from aiding Ukraine. With all three powers eyeing their next moves, Xi's Moscow trip is a bid to gauge Putin's stance on the Ukraine ceasefire and U.S.-Russia relations, while Putin probes Xi's intentions. Tang concluded, it's a meeting of mutual calculation. Who will betray the other first? Thanks for being with us here at New Century. Don't forget to subscribe and share your perspective in the comments. Until we meet again, stay informed and stay safe.